Thanks for joining us, Director of the Powerhouse Museum, Dolla Merrillees, and Marcus Hughes, the Indigenous Programs Producer. We're here today to talk to you about the development of your Reconciliation Action Plan and the Indigenous programming that you've developed as well. Congratulations on that. If I can begin, for those who might not know what a Reconciliation Action Plan is, can you briefly describe what it means for an organisation like the Powerhouse Museum to develop a RAP?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think for us it was around an opportunity to be more inclusive, dynamic and diverse workforce, which was really important. It was also about us taking a leadership position in terms of an equitable and reconciled Australia and making that line in the sand. It was also very much about our connection with community and Australia's First Nations people. And I think even more importantly, in the very kind of difficult social and political climate that everyone's operating in, it was really about ensuring a culturally safe, respectful, and tolerant workplace. So those were the underpinning factors about why we went down this path and wanting to take a leadership role. And obviously Marcus is kind of instrumental in that. So I mean, Marcus can talk about it from his perspective.
Look, you absolutely hit the nail. It is absolutely about making both safe cultural spaces. But what's really important is that messaging that goes out to community, and our ability to actually translate this Reconciliation Action Plan that consists of a range of strategies and deliverables for the next 2 years. We're able to then demonstrate in practical terms that we are actually absolutely committed to creating that reconciled space. But it's been a two-pronged or a two-tiered level. The most important part to kickstart was the development of our guiding principles around how we want as an institution to engage with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community. We developed a document called our Indigenous Cultural and Intellectual Property Protocol that provides us with 10 guiding principles about the way we work with Indigenous cultural material and communities, and that's about acknowledging the ownership and the benefit. And from that philosophical statement, we can then move into developing our Reconciliation Action Plan that's about actually delivering on that philosophy.
I think the other thing is, we have a very significant Indigenous collection, and we're custodians of that collection. So it was really important for us to put a framework around how we manage that collection into the future and how we work with community as custodians of that collection. So that was also a really strong underpinning for how we wanted to move forward.
I think a key point with the RAP plan too is that it's very practical as well. Would you like to comment on that as well?
Well, the document itself is built on the 3 pillars of respect, relationship and then opportunity. So within our document that I believe is a jolly good read. People have actually been finding it quite illuminating, but also very thoughtful and extremely rigorous. So what it covers is, again, the practical ways that we build a respectful partnerships with community, the way that we develop mutually beneficial relationships with community, and the way that we really build those opportunities, economic, cultural, intellectual, to promote and present Indigenous cultural values and perspectives through our programming and through the access to the resourcing that we have around positioning as well. It's all of those.
Right. So the MAAS has been developing its RAP since 2015. What were some of the immediate benefits and discoveries during the process, and perhaps some of the challenges?
I think the thing to note is that it was very staff-led and driven. So we formed a Reconciliation Action Plan committee that worked over the 2 years. And I think we really recognised very early on, and with Marcus's guidance, that this was a journey that we needed to go on, that it takes time to build relationships, it takes time to build trust and respect. And it's not a journey that I think any of us felt we wanted to rush. And we also wanted to embed it within the museum and within the staff. And you can't do that we didn't want to just end up with a document that we presented and then it had, it's shelved. We really wanted this to be something that the staff owned and were proud of, and was embedded within the culture of the organisation. So I think that journey's been a really learning process for us. We wanted champions. I think that's also really critical. You need champions for this. You need leadership for it. And that's, again, part of that, embedding it. And we wanted to make it meaningful. I think that's the other part of what we wanted to do. And I think it's really important to recognise that we wanted to build strong, durable, lasting relationships, and you can't do that unless you're prepared to go on that journey. So I think that's what, as a staff, that's what we've learned. And Marcus's perspective.
And it's been a lot about building the cultural competence of the organisation. And what's our staffing? Around 400, including our volunteers?
So we've got about 350 volunteers to 400, and then we've got about just over 200 staff, and then a pool of casuals. So it's a significant workforce. And I think the big thing for us, it was actually about learning about consultation, and really thinking about consultation and how we go about that in a very respectful way. And I think that's not necessarily something that it's been a learning process.
And it's that population that we have in the museum's village is as big as many regional communities. So it's about it's a whole of community approach and buy-in that we've had to develop. And that's been great. It's been a great challenge. There have been challenges through that. Because when you start to think about changing ways of thinking and ways of working and relationships, it can be quite frightening for people who have been quite comfortable in the way they manage relationships. But we've gotten there in a really healthy way that hasn't been about fear. And that's one of the things that we've always focused on, that reconciliation is not about laying blame or guilt, it's about making good for the benefit of the whole community. Yeah.
And I mean, what you said earlier, one of the things that we were really clear on, you mentioned about it being practical, and at the end of the day we're delivering programs and exhibitions and acquiring for the collection, so there is that element of practicality to it. And it was about embedding it within our business as usual, and making sure that it's not just a document. We've embedded professional development as part of that. Training is a really key part, so all of our staff are going through training. It's also a journey we're taking our trust on as well, because they are critical as the leaders of our cultural institutions, so it's really important we take them on that journey. So that training part of it is a key part to embedding this and moving this forward.
And what's been quite wonderful is the support to deliver that in a culturally appropriate way, rather than a stand and deliver lecture series. It's actually an interactive yarn up, and that really changes the texture. And when I come to Dolla, I say, can we have a cuppa? Which actually means, can we have a strategic meeting but speak together rather than anything else.
So, all right, we might talk about some of those practicalities now, and how you're going to look at measuring the RAP achievements, and what those mechanisms are, perhaps some of them, and how you expect to see the outcomes.
Absolutely. Look, what's been also really supported throughout the process is the development of our cultural consultative groups that cover curriculum, the RAP itself, our Elders in Residence program, our youth advisory mob, to help inform and analyse what it is we do to make sure that we're on track, but also to help us with the intelligence around how we build, maximise. So they're one of our key monitoring groups and reporting groups. Within that cluster, there are about 30 cultural leaders that give voice of community in this whole process. And that means whatever we do has cultural endorsement, community endorsement. And again, it makes that safe space culturally for not just the Indigenous community, but for the non-Indigenous community. And that's an incredibly important part about ensuring that what we do is rigorous and relevant and is really connected to community. In terms of the reporting structure, we've got the milestones throughout the 2 years. We are working on a constant reviewing process, but we've been able to get the buy-in and support of senior management. And in an institution of this size, that's critically important, because they are the ones who give the endorsement for the workforce to look at the way they work and what their deliverables and performance targets are.
Yeah, and I think, again, it comes to that question of being very conscious that we don't want to just deliver a document that sits on a shelf. So that constant reviewing and recalibrating to make sure we're delivering is really key. And because I need benchmarks to tell me what we're doing well, what we're not doing so well, where we need the additional investment, what we need to tweak. I mean, these are living, breathing documents that should develop with us over time, and that we adapt to and they adapt with us. So I think, I do see it as a kind of an iterative process, and one that we need to monitor and champion all the way through.
And because the document is really embedded in what is our core business as a cultural institution, it means that the milestones are relevant in a strategic way for the vision of the museum within the broader cultural context.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just going to change the focus here just a little bit, so that you've mentioned the protocols document and the RAP, and perhaps there's some interplay with those, but do you want to explain a little bit about some of the actual programming now that's resulted once these documents have been in place? So you've got, I think you've mentioned the Artist in Residence program, Curator in Residence program, and particularly I think the Elders in Residence program, because we haven't seen that, a program like that, I don't think elsewhere. So do you want to tell us a little bit about how they work, and perhaps, there is some interplay with the other documents?
Absolutely. Look, with the Elders in Residence program, it's a 2-year honorary appointment to provide wise cultural counsel. It's basically doing what elders do with a new community or a new village. We've been quite thoughtful in the selection of those individuals, but have also consulted with traditional owners, so that the protocols around that selection and permission and support has been there. Because we're a museum of applied arts and sciences, it was really important that those elders carry the knowledge in that particular space, so that it's also relevant and informed to the business of the organisation. So we've appointed 2 Auntie Fimi Bostock, who is an amazing woman.
And whose work is actually in the collection.
In the collection,
yeah.
in a significant way. And that's great because she is an elder within that particular art form and areas of discipline. And then the other is Bruce Pascoe, who covers the sciences so beautifully. So absolutely relevant to the business of the organisation, but also able to give us across the community of MAAS that cultural support, just as any elder does in a community environment. So that's really exciting. What it also does is it means it's not my voice all the time, battling on and getting my voice is gone. No, it's about also, and that is it with our consultative reference groups. It's absolutely about getting the community voice in here with authority and integrity. What
and
better
supporting
way?
you.
Absolutely. Which is great because it gives me, as we all know, the relationship with elders is about nurture and succour, and to be able to have that is a wonderful thing.
I think also, we recognise that this journey that we've been on is so much being driven and supported by markets, and that's a lot of responsibility for one individual to take on for a major cultural institution, and I have to really acknowledge the extraordinary work Marcus has done here. And I think so those advisory committees, the elders in residence, the curator in residence, the writers in residence is really about making sure that there's a larger community that's part of the museum's story. I mean, we're a major state cultural institution, a significant collection, and we also need to provide that support, I think. It's also probably worth talking a little bit about Terry Jenkins' role as well, yes, because she was instrumental in helping us as well on this journey.
Yeah, Terry's guidance with the development of the ICIP protocol, the Indigenous Cultural and Intellectual Property Protocol, was quite astounding. It's a really rigorous document, but it's easy to read. That covers those 10 principles that are so intrinsically linked to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. But it's given us the framework for engagement and consultation that is really about collaboration, more so than consultation. It positions the knowledge keepers and owners of the cultural material, both tangible and intangible. It positions all of the interpretive permissions, the ongoing rights, the ongoing benefit, back with the keepers of that knowledge. And that's been...
Yeah. I mean, we recognised that we didn't have the skills or expertise to do that, and it wasn't appropriate either for us to do that. And, Terry is such a kind of a leader and a pioneer in her own right, and I think it was an enormous privilege for us to work with her over a period of, I don't know how long it was.
Was that 6 months?
6 months to develop those. And again, she took the staff on that journey with her. She didn't just present it to us. We really worked, the staff really worked closely with her on the delivery of that. And I think that was really fundamental for us moving forward.
Okay. Just because I'm particularly interested in the curator in residence program, I suppose compared to the other 2 or 3 programs, the artist in residence, writer in residence you mentioned, and elder in residence, sorry, that's the one I'm interested in rather than. So can you just give perhaps an outline of what they're doing or what the expectations are of those roles, and then a little bit perhaps of an actual, I suppose, an elder in residence, what is it they're actually, do they come in and sit every day and someone comes to them and asks them questions?
You should also give the example of Love Is.
Yes.
Because it's such a beautiful example.
Yeah, some actual
Yeah.
examples, I think, is what we're curious about.
Great, okay.
No pressure.
No, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. Look, the curator, the guest curatorial residencies is about providing opportunities for the museum to access exceptional knowledge and expertise from Indigenous cultural workers who are able to focus in on the creation or a task that is absolutely about the collection. Each of the residencies, each of the guestings will be in response to the environment of the museum at a particular point in time, married to the resources available to support that. But it's about giving a clear space, an uncluttered space for those cultural specialists to come in and explore. I know that's probably quite vague, but for example, our first of the guest residencies is with Caroline Martin, who was the manager of Bunjalaka Museum Victoria for the last 10 years, and was responsible for driving the development of the First Peoples exhibition there, which is quite amazing and is totally embedded in community ownership through the Yelenge group. Caroline came to spend some time with us to build the cultural confidence of the staff around the ICIP protocol. So we delivered that training with Caroline across the whole of the museum. So she has a relationship now with the museum itself, with the staff. They also understand where she comes from in terms of her curatorial and her cultural rigour. So it seemed that the most logical next stage would be for Caroline to take on and build on that initial grounding that she's provided by providing a practical demonstration of what the curatorial process might look like when there is someone here to take on that role, that task, and manage all of the cultural business around the creation of a cluster of significant objects. In this instance, we'll be working in a digital framework. So Caroline will create for the museum a digital set for our web.
For the online collection database.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting because through that, the rest of the institution will be able to get a sense of the protocol in practice, and that's kind of exciting because with the residency program being able to be responsive again to the resources and priorities of the museum, but also the opportunities around who is out there working and who is wanting to go through a process of exploration, professional development or creation. We as an institution can then respond to that and offer our cultural workers exceptional opportunities to create exceptional work in a really focused way.
I think also for me and from my perspective, what it's really about also is that you know, cultural institutions like ours are kind of Western constructs. We came out of the 19th century agenda for social reform, and we've probably looked and collected under a particular lens, which is fine. I mean, that's part of the history of the institution. But what I'm really interested in is the different stories and the different lens under which our collections are looked at. And in 2014, we invited Brooke Andrew to come, and actually we literally just opened up the collection stores and said, do what you like. And he produced an installation called Evidence, and it was really about him teasing out the stories as he saw it under the lens of our collection. And I'm really, really interested in that, and I think artist engagement, the curators in residence, the elders in residence, all bring a different story, a different lens, and a different viewpoint. And I think as institutions, we have a huge responsibility to present those different viewpoints, whether they're contentious, whether they're problematic, whether you agree with them or not. That is actually part of our remit, is to provide that space for those stories to be told. And I think that's incredibly important. And I mean, give the example of Love Is, because I always think that's such a beautiful, beautiful example.
So Love Is, it's an exhibition of wedding practices, from contact to contemporary. And it was really difficult to find a way of meaningfully embedding Indigenous cultural perspectives within that exhibition context. So rather than bring out a possum skin cloak or some sort of object that we pulled out to make sure that there was a thing, we worked with the local Gadigal community and a songman, and they gifted us a Gadigal wedding song, and we were able to take that into the space and record it. I mean, record it and play it. So although there are no specific objects there, the voice of the ancestors and
pervades the space amongst all of these colonial dresses. So it's a very beautiful juxtaposition, very sensitively done, and really haunting. It was a wonderful example of, yes, as you say, not being tokenistic, but really working with it to embed that in a way that was actually meaningful. And it's probably one of my favourite, I think, space.
Great.
Okay, finally, just sum up. What advice would you give to the smaller museums and galleries in regional New South Wales who are beginning to realise and develop their vision for a RAP and want to engage with their local communities and do great work as well?
Look, I think the first thing is to start the process. One of the biggest challenges for I think non-Indigenous institutions is actually being able to develop the language that explains why they want to engage with Indigenous communities or develop a RAP, or what is their commitment to reconciliation. And getting that to a really simple place that just, is not a highfalutin vision statement. It's just like, why do we want to engage with mob? That's, I think, the hardest thing, to bring it down to what is just a really simple, livable objective and vision.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think go for it. I don't know that we knew how it was going to pan out. I don't think we had any. We knew we wanted some outcomes like the Reconciliation Action Plan. We wanted protocols around the collection. I don't think we sort of quite knew how big it was going to be or where it was going to end up. So I think it's just about going on the journey. I mean, that's part of the. That's probably the best part in a funny way. And I don't think we'd miss that for the world. So I would, don't be afraid, just go with it. It doesn't really, at the end of the day, entirely matter what the eventual outcome is. It's the process that you go through, and the willingness to be open to that, I think, is the key.
Absolutely, and again, you know, making sure that it's relevant to your business and to your country. You know, this document works for us because this is where we live, but everyone's environments and contexts are so different, and communities are so different. It's about really internal reflection about where you want to.
And would you say don't be afraid to ask?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, just do not be afraid to ask. I think that's really key.
Yeah, Marcus, you mentioned cup of tea.
Cup of tea, totally.
Which is in our rap. Michael Rolfe is our champion, and he says, you know, invite them in for a cup of tea, and I would always say that when I was promoting rap. So in fact, I think your regional stakeholders day, I can remember saying that, you know, invite them in for a cup of tea. So that's probably what you'd say to sum up.
Exactly.
It's all about cup of tea.
Yeah.
Starts with a cup of tea. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, that was fun.